Get it set up.
Good
Okay.
evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. A real pleasure for me to introduce you tonight to David Black. David is the head of membership and director of government relations at the Canadian Franchise Association. And I wanted to reach out to him to talk about both the franchise business as a business model, but also about how the pandemic has impacted the franchise business across Canada. David, how are you? Welcome to our show.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be here.
So how did the pandemic impact the franchise business? What do you think?
Well, like all businesses, the pandemic has not been kind to small business, and now the shutdown's making it even worse. The one thing I always like to remind people is franchise businesses are local businesses. So some of the things that people have started, the Shop Local, the Takeout Tuesdays, and other popular campaigns have really helped support local businesses. Unfortunately, franchise businesses there's a mistaken perception that franchise businesses are not local businesses. While the brands are recognized across the country and across the world, the local stores are in fact owned by franchisees who live and work in their communities. The CFA recently did a poll and found that 72% of Canadians would prefer to shop at locally owned businesses compared to big box stores. And that's because the mistaken perception that franchises are not local businesses. You know, you go to a kid's soccer game, you see a logo on the back of a t-shirt, of a jersey. What people don't realize, that was paid for by the local franchisee. And so when you shop local, don't forget about those franchise businesses because they're your neighbors. They're your parents at school and people you see on the street every day. It's probably one of the most ubiquitous forms of business that we don't realize.
How does a franchise business differ from a traditional local business?
So franchise business is a little different in the sense of there's a different relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee. So the franchising is a contractual relationship between effectively a franchisor and the licensee or franchisee. The franchisor provides the systems and tools and ongoing support to help their franchisees so they have what they need to succeed. And the franchisees manage the day-to-day operations of their local store, and they work with the franchisor to make that local store a success. The big part about franchising, it's about being in business for yourself, but not by yourself. You're part of a team. When I speak to elected officials, I always use the comparison to a political party where you've got the central party provides a lot of the election financing, elections database financing, branding, and then there's the local candidate in their riding who's trying to get elected. And together you can both succeed. But if you have a strong franchisor and a weak franchisee, it doesn't always work, and vice versa. So you're part of a team, and that's how you work to succeed.
How big is franchising in Canada? Is it big? Is it growing?
Franchising it's the 12th largest sector of the Canadian economy. In Canada, there's about 80,000 franchise, and these are pre-pandemic numbers. So there are about 80,000 franchise businesses that employ 1.9 million Canadians and contribute about $100 billion to Canada's GDP. Here in Ontario, we're the biggest market. There's about 40,000 franchise businesses, and they employ about 775,000 people and contribute $50 billion to Ontario's GDP. And when I say they're in 50 different sectors, the ones everybody will be familiar with is the coffee shops or the quick service restaurants. So the Second Cups, the Tim Hortons, the McDonald's. There's the Keg, Montana's. But there are other sectors that people don't think about. So cleaning companies, learning centers, such as an Oxford Learning Center, or Scholars, moving companies. 2 Minute a Truck's a great example of that. Even disaster restoration, so Paul Davis. There's home inspections. There's automotive repair, senior care with Comfort Keepers and Home Instead. And the newest sector we're in is even in cannabis with Spirit Leaf and a number of cannabis companies that are taking up the franchise business model. And it's a model of doing business that helps those businesses grow as part of a team.
Tell us about the Canadian Franchise Association. What do you do?
So the Canadian Franchise Association is the national association that represents all the franchise businesses across Canada. So we have a couple of main pillars. One is we're always developing the community. Another key pillar we have is advocacy. So I work with governments across the country to develop policies, programs that will help franchise businesses succeed. So we've been working with them through the pandemic. Another big part of it is education. We have a huge educational component where we host seminars, webinars, when we could, live events to educate potential franchisees, existing franchisees, franchisors, and even suppliers. And that's like lawyers, accountants who work with franchise businesses because it is a unique model. And then the third one is lead generation and trying to connect those potential franchisees with a franchisor and helping build those relationships and create those connections so that people can effectively find each other and learn what they need to learn so that they can succeed and grow the economy and grow their local communities.
If someone is listening and wants to own a franchise, can you tell us a little bit about that? How do you go about doing it? How much does it cost? Where do you apply? What's the process?
So I'll go through a bit of a franchising. I'll call it franchising 101 because there's a whole bunch of different things to keep in mind as somebody who is interested in becoming a franchisee kind of has to think about. So as I mentioned earlier, it is a contractual relationship. There's an agreement between the franchisor and the franchisee. The franchisor will provide you with the tools and the support, and the franchisee runs the local store. Now, some of the benefits of franchising is for the franchisee, you've got a proven system. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You've got brand recognition on day one. There's training that's provided by the franchisor to help you. There's ongoing support from the franchisor and from other franchisees because you're in it together. And then the franchisee can also do research and development. Now for the franchisor, it helps them expand a little faster with less capital because the franchisee is bringing some of that to the table. And the local owner operators have a vested interest in the location's success. And just to go back to the benefits on day one is, Dave and Brian's coffee shop might get a couple of customers on day one, but
oh, come on. Our coffee shop would be a huge success, Dave.
It will be a huge success, but unfortunately that second cup logo, people will be like, I know second cup, I know what I'm going in and I'll go in, or I'll go to Tim Hortons and so there's all of those things that come into play. Now there are some possible pitfalls. Like I'm not going to paint a nice brusher on it. It's like, there are things that people need to pay attention to.
You got to pay those big franchise fees.
Well, franchising is not for everybody in the sense of you're not just buying into a brand, but you're buying into a system. And so somebody needs to be able to follow the system. If you're an independent, like if you're a chef and you want to be creative and change the menu every week, you're not going to be good for a franchise system because a lot of that is they build the menus out and all of the things that go into making that meal. And so some of that creativity is just doesn't work in the franchise system. And the other one is not understanding the roles and responsibilities between the franchisees and the franchisors. Some people come in, think it's an easy way to make money. I'm just going to put my check down, start the store and be making money right away. You have to work hard. There is no free lunch. You do have to work hard. And when somebody's thinking of buying it, they need to actually do a self-assessment, determine what you're good at, what you're passionate about. And also do an honest financial assessment. How much can you afford to invest? How much can it be financed? How will you cover your costs, both for the business, but even your personal costs, like, mortgage, family, kids, as you're getting that business off the ground, and research all the opportunities that are out there. Some people just fixate on one, but find the stuff that you would be passionate about and then start talking to people on that.
What are the big success stories in franchising?
There are a ton of success stories. I'll give a couple of them. So, some of the largest brands by units in Canada. So it's Tim Hortons, Canadian Tire, Pizza, Royal LePage, Century 21, Booster Juice. Some of the fascinating stories are, Booster Juice. Basically, the founder started testing smoothie creations in his kitchen in Alberta. They've now got more than 300 locations in 5 countries. Another one is Second Cup, which was founded by a former panhandler. turned his life around and created that Second Cup coffee chain that we see. You know, we have other ones like Little Kickers, which is a kids soccer franchise.
Little
And
Kickers,
so,
that's
Little
fun.
Kickers, yep. And then, you know, Tan on the Run, Lice Squad, The Lunch Lady, all who've been founded by moms who are helping other women get into business for themselves. So there's a ton of different success stories out there, and a lot of people are, you know, those are just some of the big ones that are easily recognizable. Another one is like Boston Pizza. You know, Dream True Living, who we see on Dragon's Den, is a franchisor, and a lot of his franchisees have done quite well over the years.
Gosh, given the list of names that you've gone through, there's a lot of different franchise companies in Canada.
Yeah, as I said, their franchise businesses are in 50 sectors, and it's one of those things. You will walk down the street. So walk down any street in Mississauga, you're going to pass a couple of strip malls, you're going to pass some malls, independent. I guarantee you will be walking past at least 5 to 10 franchise businesses, and you won't even realize it.
What are the trends in franchising?
So the trends are, it's an industry that it's always changing. Just trying to, there are so many different sectors. So some of them, like Metal Supermarkets, is doing really well. They do basically provide metal to welding companies to manufacture things.
Hold it. Metal supermarkets?
Metal supermarkets. Another one that's doing quite well, the UPS store. So when you see the UPS store to get printing, copying, so they're another one that's doing quite well. Like,
and that's a franchise.
That's a franchise.
I thought they were all corporately owned. That's interesting.
Yeah. So this is the thing with franchising is there's a misconception that because the brand is well known, that it's just a corporate store. And it's like there's local franchisees across the country who are, like I say, living and working in their communities to build the brand, but also, you know, they want to be active parts of their community. They're passionate about their brands. They're passionate about the work that they do. And they are helping grow their local economy and the provincial and national economies.
We're chatting tonight with David Black, who is head of government relations and membership for the Canadian Franchise Association. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with some concluding comments from David about how the pandemic has impacted franchising. But I'd also like to chat with him a little bit about digitization and online and how that's impacted franchising. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with David Black, who is head of government relations and membership for the Canadian Franchise Association. And I wanted to reach out to him because, you know, I guess a couple of things, David. I was interested in how the franchise business has been impacted by the pandemic. And we've talked a little bit about that. We should talk a little bit more. Because I've had interviews with several different people from small and medium-sized businesses, and you've got to have information about how it's impacted the franchise business writ large. But also, you know, I think that lots of people have said that we've had in the last year of the pandemic, 10 years worth of digitization of the increase of online purchasing and distribution and stuff like that. And so I'm interested in how, you know, this has impacted the franchise business, because when I think about franchising, a lot of it's bricks and mortar stores or restaurants, or you talked about UPS things. And as we buy a lot more from Amazon or Indigo or the big online retailers, how's that going to impact the local guy that's got a franchise? So let's start out with the pandemic. How's the pandemic impacted franchising?
Well, the pandemic, like, it's hit everybody. You know, most of my businesses, we've joked that today is, I think, March 400th of 2020, because we've all lived a lot in the last year. It has forced a lot of businesses to change, and even our association to change. The one thing I would say is, like, all of our franchisors, franchisees, they want to protect everybody. They want everybody to, we want to get over the pandemic. They want to be able to reopen safely. And the faster we can get things under control, the faster we can get back to normal, to the way life was in February of 2019. So that's where we're, in terms of the impact on the businesses, many are transitioning to the digital world. Even I'll take my association. So we have done over 60 webinars for franchise and franchisees across the country to help them learn from each other about how to transition, how to develop better web portals, how to do digital lead generation, how to take advantage of government programs that are out there. So we're trying to do our best to educate all of our members and help give them the tools so that they can apply those tools to their local businesses. I can't be an expert in all 50 different sectors and every different, because every business is unique. And so we just want to give everybody the tools to be able to grow and recover from the pandemic.
And I congratulate you for that. But let's stay on the pandemic for a second. I got to imagine that you've got some statistics in regards to either the drop in sales or the drop in employment or the drop in the number of franchises launched and opened or franchise fees received. Any statistics on how it's actually impacted your industry?
So it's a live question that keeps changing on a daily basis. So business is down in different sectors. So some sectors have actually seen they're relatively stable. Some may have seen slight increases in the amount of business just because of the nature of what they provide. Some have seen a flat because they're just really not affected by the way the pandemic works. The ones that are down, the restaurant sectors are down for obvious reasons because of the closures. So those are ones that we're trying to help out. There's a number of stats out there about the number of restaurants that could close over the next little while. The one thing that franchise systems do bring to the table, because it's a recognized brand and they have existing supply chains, they're able to deal with the bumps in the road a little bit easier than an independent. That's just a standalone where it's one person making all the decisions because they're part of a team. And
which has got to be your example of dealing with the online and digitization is that the franchisors and your franchise association probably can help people get up and going online a little bit easier and quicker than they would if they were just an independent.
Yeah, the franchisors have been working with all of their franchisees, in some cases to create apps, to try and negotiate deals with some of the delivery companies and to try and work together so that they can take kind of benefit from the large size of their organization and the brand recognition to help everybody on the ground and help those franchisees who are all struggling. Some people, it's been really tough, and you do see those closures, unfortunately, all over Canada. I live in downtown Toronto. I've been to downtown Mississauga and different parts, and it's sad to see. But the one thing that franchising is actually good for is economic recovery. So this is a really unique thing that franchising actually is usually one of the first signs of coming out of an economic downturn. So if we look back to the recession that we had in 08, 9, 10, franchising actually was able to grow at about 6.5% coming out of that recession. And it was one of the first indicators of the economy starting to return.
That's interesting. How come?
So it's partly the brand recognition because you've got an existing supply chain. And it's because you're in, as I said at the beginning, you're not in business you're in business for yourself, not by yourself. And so as part of a team, like New Zealand saw growths of about 5.3%. So because of the growth, people start signing lease agreements, signing franchise agreements to help grow their businesses. But you're buying into that existing brand that you know of. And when people sign those leases, you're walking down the street in Mississauga, you're going to see that coming soon sign of that new business is about to open. They're renovating. So that's driving economic growth. And that's going to make you feel it's like, oh, we're in that recovery phase. We're not in the oh no stage. We're now in that growth and recovery phase because a new business is about to open. And that's where you see a lot of that economic growth. My president calls it the wow factor. And that's when you get a person who comes in off the street, like who may have lost their job in the last couple of months. They come to one of the CFA's virtual franchise shows. They meet a franchisor, they get a connected with a franchise lawyer. They get a banker, they get financing. They and the franchisor and the franchisee go find that space.
And they can launch their business more quickly.
Yeah, they can launch their business more quickly. And then it's like on day one, it's that wow factor of, you take this person who may have, I'll just say lost their job on March 1st. And, 6, 8, 12 months from now, they just opened their brand new store right in Mississauga.
Right.
And so it's that type of thing. And then you see that as a customer walking down the street or driving down past and like, great, that business is restarting. Those storefronts are starting to fill up again. And so that's where you see a lot of that economic recovery. And it's just because you're buying into an existing system. And in a way, they're tested. Franchise systems that make it through the recessions, they've been tested. They've figured out the bumps in the road and how to deal with all of those bumps in the road. So that's where it's great. It's a great way to get into it, but you have to know what you're getting into. And that's why we say, come to our virtual franchise shows, because we do a lot of education.
Is there a website that you can identify us to check out your virtual franchise shows?
Yes, absolutely. So if people want to go to www.cfa.ca, there's a ton of resources there that they can come to the virtual franchise shows. They can learn about what you need to know going into franchising. So it'll give you the tools to ask the right questions of a franchisor as you're exploring your options. And then it'll help you connect with people who will get you the right lawyer. And I always remind people, like when you're talking to a lawyer, everybody's like, oh, I'll just use my business lawyer. It's like, get a franchise specific lawyer. It's just a little different. And so get somebody with that kind of expertise. The banks have a lot of franchise finance people. They have franchise finance groups. So work with the banks, connect with their franchise finance teams, because that will help you find your way through the maze that is kind of getting financing out of a bank, because they're used to dealing with franchise system. They know what they are. They've got the track record. So work with those people, work with franchise consultants. So there's all of those resources available.
Great recommendations, David. So probably an unfair question, but what's the hot new franchise?
The hot new franchise, geez, that's a toughie, because it's such a diverse sector. The most recent one obviously is in the cannabis sector, just because that's now legal in Canada. So we're seeing new companies come in with that. But it's also, that senior care. People are seeing what's going on. They're looking for other options. It's those essential businesses that are still open, but even getting into the food space. So it's hard for me to say there's one hot brand. It's like there are different sectors that are affected by the pandemic differently and have different growth potential. So it's kind of like saying who's the best, who's going to win the
I know
World
it was an
Series
unfair
this
question,
year.
but I thought I would ask just in case there was an opportunity. David Black, Head of Government Relations and Membership at the Canadian Franchise Association. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Brian. I had a great time.
That's our show for tonight. I come to you every Monday through Friday at 7 o'clock on 960 AM, or you can stream me online at saga960am.ca, or all my podcasts and videocasts are available after the fact on briancrombie.com, on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify. Thanks for joining us. David, appreciate it. Good night, everybody.